This weekend we will see the return of the Chinese Grand Prix for the first time since 2019. And to spice things up, F1 have decided to host the first sprint weekend during this return to the Shanghai International Circuit. Smart choice? Perhaps not. Exciting choice? Well, yes and no. For us it will be an interesting thing to see, almost no time to set up, and new tarmac will certainly create spectacle. But for the drivers it will be a disaster, and they have let F1 know they're not too happy about it. So, following a round of repairs to remedy several issues on track regarding the new ground era cars, Formula 1 teams are unclear what type of track they will compete on at the Chinese Grand Prix. The sport hasn't competed at the Shanghai International Circuit since 2019. Thus, the current generation of ground effect cars hasn't had an opportunity to test their capabilities on the course. This period of technological regulations, along with the car's closeness to the ground, has made them especially sensitive to bumps. An FIA assessment undertaken late last year discovered that a few portions of the track needed to be handled, flattened, in order to ensure safe racing. The lack of current relevant data raises several issues for teams, especially as China's comeback is being considered as a new event. Do you think combining this with a sprint weekend will cause any issues? Simone Berra, Pirelli's Formula 1 head engineer, emphasized the absence of meaningful data and how difficult it makes the process of returning for both tyre suppliers and teams. "It's like a new circuit, honestly," he said. Next to that, it has been claimed the uncertainty of the track will cause a problem for outfits up and down the paddock, because we have new cars, new tyres, the 18-inch rims. The track was really not used in 5 years, it was just used for one race per year or something like that. So it will be really green and quite dirty, although obviously they will clean the track. In the past it was quite rough in terms of both micro and macro roughness. We need to understand how aging has gone in the last years. So not much data, and even for the teams it will be a big challenge, not just for us, but for the teams even more probably. And if that wasn't enough, Formula 1 will also host the first sprint weekend of the year during this week's Chinese Grand Prix, meaning the drivers will only get 1 hour of practice to test out the resurfaced and dirty track with the new cars. This has obviously resulted in criticism from the drivers and their teams. Max Verstappen, for instance, believes it was not the smartest thing to include a sprint race at this weekend's Chinese Grand Prix, which returns after a 5-year hiatus. China last held an F1 race in 2019. However, the COVID-19 outbreak halted the event. After 4 seasons away, Formula 1 returns to the difficult Shanghai International Circuit, with teams facing significant unknowns about how this generation of cars will perform. Furthermore, the circuit has since been resurfaced, so virtually little previous data is applicable at the 5.4-kilometer track outside Shanghai, making the weekend more difficult to plan. To make matters worse, China has been chosen as the first of 6 sprint locations this year, leaving the teams with only one 60-minute practice session to discover the optimum setup. When asked about the choice to stage a sprint in Shanghai in its inaugural year, Verstappen responded sarcastically, "Yeah, it's very smart to do that. I think it's not great to do that because when you have been away from a track for quite a while, I think you never know what you're going to experience, so it would have been better to have a normal race weekend there. On the other hand, it probably spices things up a bit more, and that's maybe what they would like to see. But purely from a driving and performance perspective of the sport, I think it's not the smartest thing to do. We'll see what we get there. I always loved driving there, so hopefully we can hit the ground running as well as we can, and hopefully we don't need to fine-tune too many things on the car." This year's sprints will follow a new format, with free practice and sprint qualifying on Friday, followed by the sprint race on Saturday. The reduced race format will come before qualifying for the Grand Prix, which will take place on Saturday as normal, followed by the main race on Sunday. This change means that Parc Fermé will reopen after the sprint race for Saturday qualifying, satisfying concerns that the previous structure was too restricted. However, the constraint of a single practice session remains, which, according to Sergio Perez and Carlos Sainz, is a little too far in China's situation. Red Bull's Perez, who has never placed better than 8th at the Shanghai International Circuit, expressed optimism for an easy weekend. "I just hope that there are no issues with the track, with any drain holes, any issues like that," he said. "That will just put us out of sync, but I think for the show, probably it's good." It's a good thing, but I think from the preparation side, it's going to be definitely one that is going to be really hard because, I mean, I've never raced there with Red Bull, so it's going to be quite a lot to do in a single practice. Carlos Sainz, whose best finish in China was 7th in 2017, understands the importance of having the sprint weekend in Shanghai. "I think there are two different topics," he stated. "I think China as a race circuit is a great one. I think it's one of our favorite ones for everyone. It's just a great racing track, and a track that offers a good possibility to overtake, so a sprint makes sense to have it there." However, the Spaniard voiced concern that F1's prolonged absence from China might cause teething problems. At the same time, it's what we said in the driver's briefing. We say to FIA and Formula One, with these kind of cars to go to a track with 1 hour of practice and straight into qualifying, with the regulations that they put us, with the plank wear and things like this, and how tricky one bump could make the car, I think it's not a good choice to choose to put the sprint after 4 or 5 years absence, he went on to say. Sainz warned that the circuit's resurfacing may result in a loss of grip in a scenario similar to Turkey's F1 comeback in 2020. "We also heard there's been resurfacing going on, so Istanbul 2.0 may be on the cards. Yeah, I hope not. So yeah, it just shows the uncertainty. Maybe for you guys at home it's exciting, but for engineers and drivers, it's something that, for me, in my opinion, we shouldn't take the risk and have a normal weekend." Are the drivers' comments fair though? Shouldn't they be able to cope with all the changes? Even though not all the drivers are pleased with the Chinese Grand Prix returning in F1 sprint format, former driver turned commentator Martin Brundle has dismissed such concerns. According to him, the drivers will be quick to adapt. Under the new schedule, qualifying and the Grand Prix will take place after the sprint action is completed, but drivers will still have only 1 hour of practice before being sent into action, which has raised some concerns as F1 returns to the track for the first time in 5 years, especially since the circuit will be resurfaced during that time. Many of the drivers have voiced their concerns before the weekend has even started, but Brundle isn't buying it, pointing out that the majority of the drivers have already raced here, and simulators are available to aid with any unfamiliarity. They know their way around there. The simulators are pretty good and pretty realistic, and they will have all been working hard on those, Brundle said. So they will turn up pretty well prepared. The cars won't be a million miles off on setup, and they'll just get on with it. It's an extra challenge, but I don't see it as a factor personally. Karun Chandok, an ex-F1 driver, confessed that he would hate this predicament if he was still on that side of the fence, but now that he isn't, he supports tossing them into the unknown. "If I was a driver or a team member, I'd hate it, but now on the other side of the fence we are now, I think it's great," he said. "We want them going into the unknown. We want them to go into that Friday evening qualifying for the sprint not knowing 100% of the setup is right." And guess what? With the change of the format from last year to this year in terms of the order of the sessions, it means that they'll have the opportunity to change the car and change the setup. So you'll get 2 bites of the cherry, and actually they don't just go into parc ferme after FP1, which is an important change. So I think it's fine. It's going to be a fun weekend to watch. What do you think? Will the drivers be able to cope with the new track and short amount of running time before getting into action? Or will we see a crazy weekend because of this? Let me know in the comments down below.